Here's your business news for this evening. Proposed changes to South Africa's smoking laws will boost the illicit industry. That's the warning from British American Tobacco and other interested parties. For more on this now, we speak to Johnny Moloto from British American Tobacco SA. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Just take us through some of the proposed changes and practicalities of the bill.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We believe that, there are in the main 4 areas where proposed legislation has missed a trick. We believe that it's missed an opportunity to put in place legislation that could have reduced smoking incidents as government intends. If we look, for example, at some of the areas that the government looks at, is the focus on prohibition rather than trying to create an environment that is conducive to be enforced. Let's look at, for example, what it does for the smoker. In a current environment where you have a market that is more like 70% illicit, you are left with about 30% of the market that the government can be able to regulate. So all the prohibitive measures that government wants to introduce, point of sale, retail display ban, packaging restrictions, outdoor smoking in certain areas, all of those things are basically saying that government is limiting its scope of influence more, and it's limiting its scope of influence more and more, meaning it's regulating in smaller and even smaller area. A second one is around what alternatives are you providing to the smoker who otherwise is unwilling or unable to quit smoking. In other countries, they follow a framework that is risk-based, where you regulate the most harmful products in a much more stringent manner than you would with risk-reduced products, such as your vapor products, heat-not-burn products, or oral nicotine products. So what that does is that the smoker who cannot have access to these products will migrate to the cheaper illicit brands that are available in the market. So rather than reduce smoking incidents, what this will do instead will migrate most of your smokers towards cheaper brands, and with that, increase smoking incidents. We know that during the smoking ban, we ended up with a situation whereby government banned the sale of tobacco products. However, this did not lead to actually smokers stopping to smoke. We know from studies conducted that the opposite happened. 90% or more of smokers continued to be able to access their brands. The one area in which we agree with government is restriction on underage or youth smoking or vaping, because we are concerned with the flood of illicit vapes whose origin we don't know, and these are unregulated. And this is very important for government to actually do a proper assessment of how to regulate these and make sure that proper product standards are put in place so that all these products are compliant. The one other weakness that we see. Yeah.
Johnny, sorry to interrupt you there. I just want to quickly go back to one of the concerns you raised, and that is with plain packaging. So you're saying price will then be the determining factor if everything looks the same. Are you saying that cheaper products, let's say legal ones you find in retail stores, are more unhealthy to smoke? Or are you referring here to products sold that are not paying the required taxes or meeting industry standards?
So it's a combination of those. So products that if government puts plain packaging in place, what that simply means, as I said, government is reducing its scope of influence to regulate. It means that the less compliant players will still continue to have their brand identity, to have their trademarks. They will not necessarily comply because we know they are not already complying, for example, with paying their taxes. All that means is that the legal market will comply, they will go into plain packaging, but the consumer will not want to buy these awful packs with that have graphic health warnings. The consumer will migrate rather to the cheaper brands that will continue to trade with their regular brands that are attractive, that government is actually trying to control. So our view is that unless you can try and bring illicit from the current 70% to at least about 20% or below, only then can you start to talk about controlling the market. Right now, government is failing to even enforce the existing Tobacco Products Control Act, where we have seen even during the sales ban, all the regulations that are in place that require, for example, nicotine and tar restrictions, that require online restrictions. We've seen that being breached with impunity by all these players that are not compliant. You touched on the issue of non-compliance with tax. We know that has been going on for years. And, we don't see an end in sight in terms of government being able to bring that under control. If anything, the trend that we're seeing a gradual, in fact, a very fast decline of the legal value chain, but an upward tick towards probably in the outer 80% area by the time that the bill is introduced. So our view is that unless you subject this to a proper socio-economic impact assessment of what the consequences of implementing this bill are going to be, you are missing a trick. And we believe that the government has missed a huge opportunity to do this right, rather than rushing this bill through without considering what the unintended consequences are going to be.
Johnny, let's talk about the farmers. I've read in some documents that tobacco farmers, they're becoming fewer and fewer. What are the impacts on these tobacco farmers who are supplying the legal market?
Yes. So we saw from about 2018 onwards, with the rise in illicit trade, and with fewer and fewer volumes flowing into the legal market, because we, as the legal value chain, we operate a fully integrated value chain, both from your upstream and downstream side. So the farmers grow their tobacco leaf, which they sell on to processors, from which we then procure and then obviously produce cigarettes. But with volumes declining from the legal value chain, it becomes very difficult for us to continue to procure that processed tobacco, because if you don't have a market, that simply means you cannot continue to buy a leaf that you cannot use to be able to manufacture cigarettes. Therefore, as a fully integrated value chain, it simply means that if you have one pressure probably at the supply side, that means the entire value chain suffers. Consequently, we've seen farmers face more and more pressure and having to reduce their volumes that they sell onward to us. And with that, you're affecting not just the farmers themselves. Remember, in the farming community, those farmers not only are the ones that benefit from their crop, but they also have dependents. So you have a net multiplier effect that impacts not only the livelihoods of the farmers themselves, but also of their dependents. We had estimated that at the time we went to the sales ban, farmers in the rural areas, especially the emerging farmers, you had about 30,000 dependents depending on this sector. And that number has dwindled significantly due to market pressures and the ability of us to be able to sell.
Thank you so much for your time tonight, Johnny. There's still time until the 4th of August for comments on this bill. And that was Johnny Moloto from British American Tobacco, South Africa.